On behalf of Festival co-directors Namita Gokhale and William Dalrymple and all my colleagues at Teamwork Arts, welcome back to GLF's Brave New World. Those of you who missed our earlier sessions with some of the best speakers in the world, including Nobel laureates Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo, Ruskin Bond, Elizabeth Gilbert, Elif Shafak, Gloria Steinem, Margaret Atwood, and so many others, you can catch them on our Facebook page, GLF Litfest, or on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. Our official radio partner is Red FM Bajate Raho. Our session today on JLF's Brave New World is Silence in the Age of Noise. Erling Kagge in conversation with Åsne Seierstad. Erling Kagge is a multifaceted Norwegian explorer, entrepreneur, author, art collector, and publisher. He speaks with writer and journalist Åsne Seierstad about his travels and adventure and the power of silence in an always switched-on world. This session is presented in partnership with the Norwegian Embassy in India, who have been traditionally our partners at the Jaipur Literature Festival and the Jaipur Bookmark. Erling Kagge is a Norwegian polar explorer. He was the first in history to walk alone to the South Pole and the first to reach the North Pole and the summit of Everest on foot. Kagge writes on exploration, art collecting, and philosophy. Åsne Seierstad has worked as a correspondent since 1993 in Russia, China, the Balkans, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, and has received numerous awards for her journalism. She has written 6 books. The Bookseller of Kabul was translated into over 40 languages. Her latest work, Two Sisters, about 2 Norwegian Somali sisters who joined ISIS in Syria, is one of Norway's highest-selling books. She was awarded the Brage Prize in Norway. Please do comment and ask questions by typing it into the comment section. In case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you can find us on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF. And of course, if we drop off, just hang in there. We promise to be back on JLF Litfest on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, Silence in the Age of Noise. Erling Kagge in conversation with Åsne Seierstad.
Welcome, Erling. It's good to see you in your library, far from snow and ice. You are a person who have been looking for extremes. You've been going all on your own to the 2 poles, to Mount Everest. And in one of your, in the book, you tell how when you went to the South Pole, you had to have a radio with you in order to be in contact with the world. But you took off the batteries so that nobody could reach you because you had to bring the radio with you for insurance reasons, but nobody said you couldn't leave the batteries behind. Why was it important, if we can just start in the most extreme place, why was it important to be on your own totally? And did you achieve the silence you were looking for on that trip to the South Pole?
I think as a Norwegian, I think it's important to try to make your life more difficult than it has to be. And I had this idea about walking to the South Pole alone as the first in history. And I wanted to be in silence. I didn't want to have a conversation with anyone. And then I was forced by the airplane company, insurance, etc., to bring a radio. But I took the batteries out, as I said. So when I start out on my trek, this 1,300, 1,400 kilometers into this huge white nothingness, I was absolutely by myself. And that was my goal, because I want to experience the silence. I want to be a part of the nature. I want to have a conversation with the environment. I want to send some ideas out and get all the thoughts back again. And, then you can't sit and talk with your girlfriend every evening if that's going to happen.
This is, you were in your early 30s when you went to the South Pole. But this started a lot earlier. And in your book about silence, it's a lot about also being in nature, and being in nature is very important to you. Can you tell us a little bit on how you, you do the extreme trips, but you also do your walk every day. And I also would like you to give a little bit of context, because we have an international audience. Like, where do you live? Where is the Oslo fjord? Where is the woods? Like, how do you use nature around you?
As a Norwegian, you are obviously very privileged because you live close to nature. And as you said, this desire to explore the world, experience nature came early on. Obviously we are all born explorers. And since I was a little kid, was no question at my home if what we're going to do in the afternoons after school and in the weekends. We had to do outdoors. And this was at the time when you actually listened to your parents. So I always did outdoors. And to start with, I didn't appreciate the silence because I found the silence to be a little bit disturbing. I thought about silence as something negative. It's about loneliness, sadness. It's about being bored. It's about, being let out. But somehow, slowly in my life in nature, especially, I learned that silence can also be your very good friend. It's about finding meaning in pauses, having breaks. It's about getting to know yourself. So, this was growing on me. And eventually, when I walked to the South Pole alone for 50 days and nights, I really learned a lesson about how important silence is today. And at that time, but I think today it's even more important because we are always connected, we're always disturbed, it's always some expectations that we're going to be available. And I don't think we're born to be available at all times.
Mm. And as you say, you're privileged living in Norway. We're very few people with vast nature. So we can find silence in nature. We don't need to go far to actually sit by a lake. And there's probably no one there. And you can hear the birds. And the longer you sit, you hear different sounds. But you also have an example because you're also an art collector, and you are someone who connects with artists and your house. If people had shown, if the video had been on your whole house, you have an amazing art collection. So you have one story in your book about Marina Abramovic, who sits in silence, and she's just supposed to look at people. And can you tell us how her hearing changes throughout the days that she passes in the middle of noise? She's not in nature, she's in the opposite. She's in the middle of a big city.
Yeah, it's I think, first of all, I think it's important to think about silence and noise or noise to being the opposite of silence, in the sense that, to me, noise is not only about sounds, it's about being disturbed at all times. It's about cars passing, radios running, telephones ringing. That's noise to me. And Marina Abramovic, she was missing silence so desperately. And of course, her art is very much about silence too. And one day she decided to travel into the desert and find an absolute quiet place, sit down and experience the silence. And she got to the desert, she sat down, and it was absolutely quiet around her. But then she had all this noise in her head because, of course, she was thinking thinking about the past or the future. And that's also kind of a noise. So she didn't experience, what she came for. But eventually, slowly, she managed to stop thinking. And then the silence came to her. And, somehow, your silence is different from my silence, and everybody got their own silence.
Mm. And it's also, you write about in your book how silence is kind of also a state of mind. And sometimes the chaos we have inside or the stress, sometimes we are very active in order to, in fear of our silence, in fear of what will come up if we sit totally silent. So it's also about befriending your inner silence, actually, in order to, to live here and now, to get to know yourself and to get to know your inner feelings. Can you say something about that? It's not just the outside noise, but it's our inner chaos and noise too.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting because in the silence you get to know yourself. I think noise is about other people, it's about other stuff, it's about running away from yourself, while silence is about listening to yourself. And of course, that's also one reason why people, including myself, sometimes will be avoiding silence, because it could be uncomfortable. Noise is much more easy, and also in the major religions, silence is quite often about, God will come in silence. God doesn't come in thunder and heavy storms. God comes in silence. And if you don't believe in God, at least, you will expose yourself in silence. And it's nothing new that man has had a hard time to deal with himself, because, that has been going on forever. But today, I think it's even more extreme. And I think it's important to think about, silence is not a fad. It's not a trend of a desire to experience silence. Silence is something profound that we're kind of born to experience, but something we tend to forget today.
It's interesting you say it's not a trend, because somehow there's more how to say, talk about seeking silence these days. You have silent retreats, you have, of course, the explosion of meditation, of yoga. Here we have an international audience. Norway came probably late to that wave. I know it's a traditional activity in other places. It's new here, but is the world somehow more noisy? Because that's the subtitle of your book, which I can show the readers here: Silence in the Age of Noise. Is silence, is there more or less silence now? Yes, we agree there's more noise, but is there a bigger understanding that, you even have people, you go for several weeks to silent retreats where you're not supposed to talk. You describe people who go into silent proof or soundproof rooms in order to just sit in silence. That, is it more, is it less? Is it a trend? Is it going to pass? What's the next?
I think in the Industrial Revolution and on, it has been so much sounds in society. But I think after the smartphone, at least in terms of inner silence, it's much less inner silence today than it was 10 years ago. And when I sat down to write my book on silence, I could, of course, have written about silent retreats and silence hotels and etc., or also meditation and hypnosis, etc., or yoga. But all this requires money and or techniques. So I want to write a book about finding silence where you are, about inventing your own silence, and finding this inner silence which is there all the time waiting for you to explore.
And to talk about the book, because you are a publisher, you are a devout reader, and you are a writer. And how did this book come about? Why you asked the questions like, why we need silence and how we achieve it, and where we can find it, and how did it start as a thought? Did it start as an article? Did it start with just a philosophy, or how did it start? Why a book about it?
It started, as many things in life, it kind of starts with, several, different ways. And one thing was I have 3 daughters, and they became teenagers, and my life was all about noise for many years. And suddenly I started to see that my daughters, they didn't know what silence is. They didn't relate to silence. They were always connected. They were always looking down, exploring the world by looking into a screen instead of looking out to the window to walk out to the door. And they were always kind of living through someone else. So at least almost always. So then, I got a bit scared. I was just, I tried to tell them about silence, and they said, silence is nothing. And I asked philosophers, and they also said, silence is nothing. And of course, the first year at college when you study philosophy, they tell you nothing comes from nothing. So, few people knew that much about silence. So then I asked myself 3 questions. What is silence? Where is silence? And why is it more important today than it ever has been? And then after a year and a half, I had 33 answers to those 3 questions.
Do you want to tell us some of those 33? They're all in the book. People can read, but if you want to mention some that we haven't really talked about yet.
I think it's by purpose I asked those 3 questions, but the answers is kind of blurry. But I think, this importance of accepting that silence is difficult. It's so much easier to live through noise. And then you have to kind of get across this threshold and then start to listen to yourself, to try to have a dialogue with yourself. It's about getting to know yourself. And of course, that's something all philosophers through all ages have agreed on. The most important thing in life, is one of the most important things in life, will be to get to know yourself. And then you need silence. And it's easy to focus on the sad things and the negative things of silence, but and of course in literature, that's kind of every second book almost is about terrible things happening in silence. But I think it's just kind of very important to remind yourself, and that's what I try to write about the richness of silence and how it can be, as I said, a great friend.
Many people are afraid of silence, not only because of the inner noise or the inner chaos that we're trying to kill, but it's also with people, with a partner, or just with all the small talk we do, because we are afraid of just sitting for a while, thinking about what we've been talking about, and it's in the book is also this example of this hiking guide who brings a group out to nature, and he gives them a little piece of paper before the tour starts, and which says something like, "Yes, this is absolutely fantastic. Yes." So we it's like this thing that we need to express always. Oh, this is fantastic, or we know we're on repeat, but also then how to in our daily life how to talk when we talk, be silent when we're silent. I think your book is a bit about that too, to be in the moment, not to live tomorrow or in a different space, but to allow yourself to be in a conversation, but also be quiet in a conversation. How to give ourselves strength to dare to be silent with another person, with a partner, or just with an acquaintance or someone you meet at a big dinner, and you just think that you have to sit and talk all the time, instead of maybe now some culture, like food comes, it's silent because now they enjoy the food. So is it the chatter? Is it also about trying to avoid the chatter and just speak when you speak and be silent when you're silent.
Yes, the chatter and blah 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 blah, can be okay, but sometimes you need to have a break, I think. And as I said, for a couple, for a boyfriend or a girlfriend, husband, wife, if you, at least my experience, if you have to explain everything in relationship with words, I think they're in deep shit. And also I think in daily life, so many things that you need to understand and need to explore that you don't have words for it, because many of the most important things in life, they don't have words and they don't have any lasting forms. So and if you then need to explain it all by words, you'll have a problem. So I think you just need to respect that our language has its own limits, and I think my experience is also when you manage to be silent with a person, you also get much closer to the person. Not in the sense that you're not going to speak at all, but kind of if you need to manage to interact, manage to have a dialogue, manage to hang together without being afraid of these quiet moments or minutes or hours, your life will become richer.
We've been talking earlier about silence in the times of Corona. You've written an essay about it for the Financial Times, how the isolation that we that has been imposed on us in different ways in different countries. And in your experience, as you wrote, it reminded you, the whole isolation period now reminded you of your walks to the South Pole, being on your own and focusing on the details. Nothing is really always total silence. Snow is not just white. There's shades of white and there's shades of, even colors. And that this whole time that we're living through now, it's made you focus more, be more concentrated. Can you say something about that experience now that it's been 2 months?
For a while I was living in quarantine here in Oslo because I've been traveling. And or in general, kind of the whole spring was living in quarantine, very little socializing, spending most time by myself. And it absolutely reminded me about being on expedition in the sense of the simplicity of life. That you're kind of getting up, you're eating, you're doing your things, you're having lunch, doing your things again, eat and go to bed, kind of get into these routines. And you also get much closer to yourself. And I got closer to nature. I think, one of the biggest mistakes we are doing on Earth today is that we have stopped listening to Mother Nature. Mother Nature is 4.5 billion years old, and somehow we prefer to listen to man-made items. And as I said, we also prefer to explore the world through a screen, rather than kind of walk into the world and feel the air, feel the smells, the winds, the different sounds, get sore feet from walking. And then again, in the Corona times, you couldn't go to the office, at least I couldn't. And, then kind of start to listen to nature again. And also remind that, as I said, the best things in life, they don't have any lasting forms. And also that, some of the best things in life are also for free.
And as you said initially, you live in a privileged situation. You have space, you have nature around the corner from your house, and you can go on long stretches at the time away. Because your daughters are now grown, and you are a free man somehow. So you write in your book that silence is luxury, but how can all of us, some of us living in cramped apartment, having responsibility up on our necks, with children, with work, with having to be connected and so on, what kind of advices, or what kind of how to achieve some kind of, a piece of silence in a very noisy world, much more noisy than your own world?
Life is difficult. And I think, in Corona times too, we learn a lesson about that no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow. You believe but nobody knows. And in terms of silence, it's, the silence I'm writing about is the silence which is within yourself. And of course, to me, I find it easiest to find it in nature. But again, wake up in the morning, few minutes extra in bed, you get this silence. Have a shower. The shower is a perfect place for silence. Get to the office, maybe you walk to the office, or maybe you walk a few stations rather than taking the metro, and the whole way, and you can have some silence. If you walk the stairs up to your office, you'll have some silence. And when you do the dishes after dinner, or when you make the dinner, you'll have some silence, some inner silence. And of course, if you make love, hopefully you will have some inner silence. And then at the end of the day, you go to sleep, and then again, you will have some inner silence. So I'm not saying it's easy, but when people say to me, it's impossible for me, maybe, but probably not.
Yeah. And you have written several books, and you've written a book that's also translated to English, right, about walking. And you've written a third book, which is about what a polar explorer has, in Norwegian is called What I Didn't Learn in School and What I Wish I Did. And then you also written a book.
Philosophy of Polar Explorers.
Exactly. And then you also written a book about art collecting, which is also, I read silence into your connection to art too. So I'd like, before we open for questions, if you can, are these books, what way maybe that's too big a question. In what way are these books connected? I would like actually you to tell us a little about starting actually with your school years, because you had great difficulties in reading and even in speaking and talking up to 10, 11 years old. Can you say something about how that formed you, being the boy to whom things didn't come easy?
Yeah, I think that's a very important part of my life, that many things didn't come easy to me. So as I said, I was heavily dyslexic. So I did very bad at school. I was bottom 3 at school 12 years in a row. And of course, that was brutal. But, it's also taught my lesson about life being brutal. And it's also taught my lesson about, because when a teacher told me to do something, I couldn't do it the way the teacher told me because it didn't work for me. So, I learned that I shouldn't listen to authorities, all the time. And also learned to find my own routes to solve the problem. So I think, it was rough, but also in one way healthy. And, when I look at people around me, if you're a girl in Oslo, in a nice neighborhood, you're blonde, you're beautiful, all the pupils loves you, they love you, the teachers love you, everybody is giving you an easier time in life. Of course, then you don't have anything to fight for. So for me, it was a negative thing, but as many things in life, it also turned out, had a positive side. And talking about those books, I think Silence and Walking and Philosophy for Polar Explorers, they have several things in common, but the most important thing in common they have is our relationship to nature. That's what I want to, when I sat down to write these books, I really felt I had something important to say. It's, as you know, it's tough going to write a book. And the main reason I did it was because I felt I had something to say about silence, walking, about being a young kid, all relating to nature.
And the book, I would like to mention the fourth book too, about the art collector. What is, because we've been talking a lot about nature. Art is man-made. But it's why has art become so important to you? How does that have anything to do with silence, with who you are? What does it make you feel when you look at an artwork? How is art affecting you in this sense?
I think in general, great art is quite often about silence, while lousy art will be more about noise. In the sense that a great art piece, somehow the artist has taken her or his, all these experiences, humor, love sickness, different defeats, victories, whatever they have been eating, reading, music they listen to, movies they have seen, all these different experiences kind of digested into this one. You need to slow down, focus, to grasp something.
Where you are. This is the first time. It doesn't say the name who's wrong now, especially in the middle of hectic work from home schedules and housework. That's the first question.
If you live in the center of Bombay, it's going to be noisiness. You need to find your own silence, and that silence is within you, and you need to. You are very busy, but I think most people are underestimating themselves.
Asks, when you surrender to silence, does the mind overwork and complicate?
If you're listening to some music or whatever, it's different. So hours to kind of cool down in your head and think less and stop.
Yeah, Tilotama asks, I struggle with silence in a long-distance relationship. However hard one tries, it's not easy. How do you balance that? Or rather...
I think in relationships are some of the most difficult things in life. And, if the person is... I wish I had a great formula. Tell your partner how you think it's also easier to have an enriching, not all the time, but almost all the time.
Okay, you of the first principle.
Us mainly is that he's a genius and we are not, or impossible, whatever. He can't see it. It's very different, but and he likes to talk all the time, ideas about how it's going to change space travel, how it's going to revolutionize, discuss it with people. He can listen to lectures, and that's why I thought it was interesting to talk to him about silence, because
actually
can, and I think meditation is a great idea, but absolutely everywhere without any techniques.
Some questions have been, it's been pushed there, the other ones are pushed up, so I have silence or take away from it.
That's an interesting question, because I think music calms you down, and maybe it also empties your mind from the other noises. So, music can be very good.
There is one question about, I'll have to wait for that one. Opposed to talk and chatter.
Yeah, I think it can absolutely. In silence, you can find almost, of course, in terms of spirituality. silence.
Experience under Manhattan that we haven't mentioned, but question is coming up here.
About 10 years ago, to cross New York City, Duncan, and some other people came and went. We crisscrossed the city from northern Bronx out to the Atlantic Ocean ground, crossing the city. And that was to see New York City from the upside down, very much about earning money. So it's a super noisy place in the silence, even in New York.
Here the question came back about Abramovich. Could you please throw some light on the silence in the art and especially on Marina Abramovich?
The artist is present. Is this art piece by Marina throughout the whole day, and they're facing each other in silence. To the eyes, you have the breath, you have the audience, you have these dialogues, you know, how we grow with the situation, everything is in silence. Works that fascinates me even more, like from the 70s. And then Marina was hanging on the sharp end of the arrow through her chest. And, you know, that's about silence too. That's straight art, usually, to me, is...
Do you handle the chatter at parties?
Contradictions in terms of silence is not about turning your back to the world. It's not about, it's about seeing people from a different angle. It bores me. But we don't sit with a person in a party and talk at any time. And if it's not happening, blah, 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 sometimes it could be too much.
Sachev asks...
Sometimes I walk as a social thing because I enjoy it, and it's somehow... You can sit down, have a glass of wine or coffee or something, but it's nicer to walk at another. And, you know, it's even reflected in our language. You move, you be yourself, to walk, to move. And also in the Norwegian language. Yeah, so that's, I think it's, you know, you need to get rid of that noise and start to experience and being present in it.
And silence needs to balance out in the sense that if you've a bit stressful even for a known right.
You need to balance for sure. This idea about, you know, being in silence for too long is not healthy. It has gone too far.
Well,
streaming in, and Erling really ask you what was the din, just in terms of the sound that you heard in these three places.
When you're super tired and it's just about getting to the summit of Mount Everest, silence or anything, all they want is to get up and to survive. So in that sense,
creating conversation, just what we all needed right now in lockdown. And thank you all for watching. And apologies, we thank our radio partner, Red FM, Bajate Raho. Please do remember to log in at 9 p.m. for our next session. The episode surrounding him continues to fuel the popular imagination. Even today, over 350 years after his death, the debate rages on, changed the course of Indian history. In conversation with Ira Mukhoti, Supriya Gandhi discusses the story of the two most loved Mughals and asks why is there such ambiguity about the Mughals in India today. As always, we have a special extract from the Jaipur Music Stage archives featuring interlaced with Mediterranean sounds, Arabic and Balkan melodies, and Iberian and South American folklore. Enjoy it.
Me gusta que caiga el agua, que lo traiga. Ay, de Cristo Santo. pecho en el sudor, solo tengo lleno. Que con lo mucho que yo te camelo, la pobre vida mía, que tu amor me falta. Ay, como nadie, eres la estrella, la que ilumina mi noche. ¿Cómo quieres que te quiera si tú no me has querido como yo? ¿Cómo quieres que te quiera si tú no nadie en la vida? Y ayer te vieron pasar. No quiero que vuelva más, dejar más sola llorar. ¿Cómo quieres que te quiera si tú no más que bien la vida? ¿Cómo quieres que te quiera? Nadie en la vida. Que te quería